Join the team.
Hey team, it's McGuire Review, and we're going to take a look at a couple very cool two-player games that are out there that you can get your hands on that have already, they've already been released. Unmatched has been out there for quite some time now. There's a ton of different sets that you can get for Unmatched. Knockdown is relatively new. It released from its Kickstarter. I think it was earlier this year. It was delivered, or maybe late last year. I'm not exactly sure on that timing, to tell you the truth, but it has been out for a little while. This is an Awakened Realms title. It's part of their Awakened Realms Light division. It was a Kickstarter. This one here is by Restoration Games as well as Mondo Games. And again, they're both really fun two-player games. But what I really wanted to do today is give you a feel for the different things that they kind of offer, because at the end of the day, most only have so much where they're going to buy one or the other. They may not buy both. And I think there needs to be more videos out there that talk about kind of the differences between different types of games. And maybe one is for you more than the other. I'm going to make kind of a call at the end of this video on which one I think, if you only had the cash to get, you'd want to go with, more than likely. But it doesn't mean that that one is a better game. And I want that to be understood very clearly, because I do very much enjoy both of these games and both of these titles. And you could say one is better than the other for a number of different mechanical reasons that may be important to you or may not. So we're going to get into that a little bit. Let's just go ahead and start with kind of an overview here with Unmatched. This one is going to be, I believe, simpler. This one's going to be simpler than what you're going to find in Knockdown. Knockdown, they're both easy games, right? Like most just two-player head-to-head combat games are. But you're definitely going to take longer explaining this game, how the cards work, how the combos work, than you would with Unmatched. Unmatched, you basically have your miniature or your miniatures, your fighters, your kind of helpers to your main hero. And then you have a deck of cards, and that's pretty much it. And the cards are very, very basic. You can literally be up and playing this game within a minute and a half of explanation. And by the second round, you're like, okay, yeah, I totally get this, right? It's a very, very easy pick up and play game that you can just explain very quickly. Where with Knockdown, it's going to take a little bit more to explain it. There's definitely more rules. There's definitely more mechanics. And is that good? I don't know. I don't know. It's really what you're after. I think there's some things in here that aren't really necessary, and we'll talk about that. Where this game here is a very, very clean, streamlined two-player combat game. Okay. In this game, you are essentially just moving around this board, and it is just a figure versus a figure, and it is a two-player game. Now, what's nice about this particular platform that you really won't find here is if you want it to be a four-player game, you can do that. You can do team matches with this game. You cannot with this game. This game is strictly designed to be a 1-versus-1, like duke it out, Street Fighter combat arcade kind of style game. It is a 1v1. This is a 1v1 but can be a 2v2 as well. So you can have those team matches, which I think does add a whole nother dynamic to this particular game, and in my opinion, it probably broadens what you can do with this game and the audience that may want to play this game. There are some people that just do not like playing the 1v1 games. They just don't like that competitive nature of I win, you lose. They may not have that problem sitting around a table with 4 people playing a competitive game, but there are just some folks that don't like that experience. Where here, you can kind of eliminate that experience by the team-based play and getting the 2v2. So it's just, a little bit something different there and broader. So we'll go ahead and we'll get into showing the game, because I want that to be kind of part of this as well, as you're seeing, what these two titles look like. And the reason why I picked these two titles is there are a number of games that are kind of like this, and there are other games that are kind of like this. Whether it has a board or whether it's just a deck of cards, or whether the board is made up by use of cards. Okay? So you can kind of just watch this video and see, oh, that's kind of like that other game, and I sort of see the differences now in these different styles. You do have your rule book. Rule book's done really nicely. It's laid out really nicely. Very, very clear rule set. There's really no questions there. One of the things that I do like, and you're going to find this with both of these, is they have nice inserts where everything fits right in the box. You can see there, very nicely done. You've got your miniatures. The miniatures are really well done in this game. Nice, deep, sculpted and cut. I mean, I would say they're pretty good. Are they like over the top? No, but they're pretty good. I actually think they look better right out of the box than what you get here, because the reason is because these are already, they have that wash on them where these do not. Maybe you have a problem with that. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to paint these, and that's going to be a better experience to paint them versus what you would have here. You're just going to have your deck of cards. Again, your hero card just telling you exactly what you can do. And you're going to have your standard deck of cards. Very, very simple. Just telling you, I mean, literally it's just attack, defend, or scheme cards. A little bit of text on there indicating what happens in different parts of that combat or that interaction. Okay, you're going to have nice little health dials. All right, and then you're generally going to have sort of like an extra helper, where Bigfoot's got this jackalope, which is pretty cool. And those are just shown usually by these really nice plastic tokens, where Robin Hood is going to have 4 of these. Just put 2 of them out. Well, I'll just put them out 4 out there. Robin Hood's going to have your merry men there, fighters. That's going to come with him. Okay, so you can see that's it, and then you are going to get a board in this title, so you're going to get a nice board. It is double-sided, so it's going to offer a couple different combat setups for you to be able to play the game. And this one here is going to be, if I had to say what's the big mechanic of this game, it's really not as much in the card play. And we'll talk about that when we get to Knockdown here. It's going to be more in your tactical positioning. That's what really makes this game, I think, fun, and something that, like, it feels very satisfying when you're able to tactically position yourself in a great spot where you can pull off your attack or you can pull off your defense. And that's what it comes down to for me for this game. It really is not, I hate to say this, but it's really not the cards that you're playing, because there's so many of these cards where the way combat works is you're just throwing down your attack card, and this would be one for Robin Hood here. It says right up top that it does 5 damage. And you would say, okay, that's what I'm going to do, and the other person would lay down a card to defend if they wanted to. And then you're just flipping over the cards, and you're comparing these totals. And it's whatever the difference of that is the damage that you're taking, outside of any like special ability that might be at the bottom. So that's how these cards are working, and that's how combat works. So combat is very, very simple. Just a compare of a number. And that's generally not going to work out exactly how you think it's going to. You might use one of your big cards and do 6 damage, and the other person just blocks it all, or has something that negates it based on an ability, and then that's kind of over. So for me, it really comes down to the winner isn't the one that just ends up shuffling their deck and getting the best, like, biggest hit cards right off the bat. The winner is generally the person that strategically positions themselves the best around the board. That's what makes this one, I think, a strong title. And that's what makes the win of this one, I think, really satisfying, because it does come down to the wits of how you position yourself, in my opinion. I also think this game is going to have real longevity, because it has a very broad IP. You've got some stuff like Bigfoot that I don't believe anybody really owns the IP on. Bigfoot. You've got things like Robin Hood that companies definitely own the IP on. You have things, we're now seeing Marvel, different Marvel characters. We've got Ghost Rider, we've got Moon Knight. There's a newer set that's come out, looks really cool. Which, soon to follow, will we have an Unmatched with Star Wars. You got Bruce Lee, you literally can have Bruce Lee fighting Ghost Rider, right? So it's like, I think that gives this one a broad reach with the amount of IP that it's able to hit and get those characters on the board. So that makes this one really cool, in my opinion, and it makes it very playable for probably a long period of time, all right? So that is That is Unmatched. Okay, that's what Unmatched is all about. And if you've never played this game, I highly recommend it. This is Knockdown. So again, Knockdown is an Awakened Realms game. Now, in comparing these two directly, I think Awakened Realms has done something very cool with this game, but they're definitely going to be limited on IP because the route they took was the characters that you get in these sets, and there's actually 3 of these sets that have been released. This is just one of them for Nemesis, if you can see the artwork there on the front. Each one of these follows their own IPs of their own games. So you've got the Nemesis set that's out. There's a Siege Storm set that's been released, as well as a Tainted Grail set that has been released. And the miniatures in there are really cool. They are different than miniatures that are in the base games, so you do get a little bit of different models. They're just as high quality as the miniatures that are from those games, but they are not like washed in any way like these are. I think that would have been a really good touch for these sets, for it to be that way. I don't know, maybe in the Kickstarter you could have got them that way as a Kickstarter thing. I can't remember, but the ones that I have here are not washed. And I think that would have been a nice touch to kind of compare from that perspective. I do think the insert is done a little nicer. It does have a little topper on it, okay, that holds everything, nicely in place. So I think that's done really well. There definitely are more components, all right? You're going to have your cards. There are a few different types of cards that are in this game. So I'll kind of set those out here. There are going to be really, really nice miniatures. And you can see the miniatures definitely are higher quality as far as cut and sculpt, I would say. Or let's say not cut and sculpt. Let's say higher quality from the perspective of the detail that's notched into these. But you can see there the size. They're just kind of your standard board game size miniatures. So they're all going to be, about the same size as far as scale. There are going to be various different types of little chits and components in here that each one of these characters will be using. And that may be, like the bullet here goes with one of the characters. It's an ability that character has in the game. There's various different things. Here's like an infection token. The alien character gets this little infection token that they can use to do damage if enough of the other character gets infected. So that's really cool. You do have dice that are included in this game. Really nice dice. And you have these little wooden cubes. And we're going to talk about those specifically. All right? And then another thing that's kind of neat about this is they really did, and Awakened Realms is known for doing some creative things, but I can really appreciate this. They have utilized the box as part of the game. So you can see there it builds like a little stage that they would be fighting on, and you have your actually it goes the other way. I put this on backwards. It goes like this. You have your stage that they would be fighting on. So you'd place your characters in these starting zones here, and that's basically the terrain that you would have for your fighting. So you can already see, and again, there's a number of card games that already exist that work this exact same way with this exact same mechanic, where you lay out like a track or a bridge or whatever it is made up of cards, and your token of your character can kind of move back and forth, and then you have a hand of cards where you're playing. That's kind of the style of this game, whereas you can see the difference in a two-player game like this, where you've got this vast board that you can move, well, not a vast board, but in comparison, you've got this larger board that you can move around that has different zones and environments, and that plays a much now bigger role in the success of the winner of this game. And it's a lot of fun when you do two versus two with those team games as well. Okay, where here, this is it. You've got like this is it. This is all the movement room that you have. Now, that does force more combat interaction, okay? You can go a number of rounds in this game, and if you're very tactical about where you position yourself and how you move around, especially if you're using two characters that are only melee, you could go a number of rounds with literally no combat. And, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. I kind of like that because it feels like you're gearing up and you're getting ready for your big battle, and I kind of like that aspect. You're not going to get that in this game. Pretty much every round, something is going to be happening because you have such a short distance that you are away from that person. It really comes down to the cards that you play, because a lot of these cards can only be played in certain ways. Like you have to be in melee range, or it has to be to the side of you, or just 1, 2 in front of you, and that will be defined here on these cards. These cards are also used in different ways, and I forgot to call that out. We'll hit that over here as well. These cards can be utilized to just do normal things that are right on the card, like I'm going to uppercut, or I'm going to leg sweep, or I'm going to do this or that. Or you can use the symbols that are on these cards and add them up to be able to doing more of these big combos, big combinations. And that's going to be a difference in a game like this. You're going to be able to build up these cards to do like these powerful combo moves and get these combos off. And that's kind of fun. That's kind of a fun aspect. That's probably the most satisfying part of this type of style game, is when you're able to make a hit and then get one of these like awesome combos. That doesn't really exist over here. Well, particularly that doesn't exist with these two characters. Maybe other characters in this whole entire IP do have that, because every single character is completely different. But that doesn't really exist here. It's just you go in, you make your attack with your card. You don't get like these extra like combos that you can add cards up to be able to make these special attacks. So that's kind of cool. Also with this game, each character has a different side, so it's a little bit different. You can either be a captain or a gunslinger, right? So you've effectively got 6 different sort of things here amongst your 3, or 6 different roles amongst your 3 characters that are included. Let's get this other character out here. I'll just put her right here, just ready to go. Now, another difference between these two titles, and again, thinking about other games in the market, some of these games work from the perspective of you have a set health total, and when that health total comes to 0, you lose. That's how Unmatched works. You've got a dial, you set the dial to your health total. It is different for different characters. When it goes to 0, it's over, right? You lose if you go to 0 before the other person. Whereas in this game here, you don't really have a health total. You just take wounds over the course of the game, and those wounds are defined by these light and dark blue cubes here. Either light wounds or heavy wounds. And after you get a certain amount of those, your opponent can then choose to basically knock down, like knock you out. And that's really based on a mathematical total. Either one, it's going to be based on you rolling these dice, or it's going to be based on you doing a dex kind of thing and stacking these cubes. Now, this is where I think a game like this starts to... I don't know, it's hard for me to say this, but I have to be honest from like a game design review perspective. I think sometimes some of these games just get too much crammed in. And I think when other titles just take more of the straightforward, pick a thing and streamline it and stick with it and do it well, they really have more longevity in the market. And this is one where I think like they probably just went too many mechanics in the game. And it is fun, don't get me wrong, but this whole dex thing, right? Like, this is not a mechanic that really needed to be in this game. Like, it's fun after you do it for the first time, second time, but then after you really start to play this game, you kind of end up going away from this dex mechanic, and I'll explain this here in a minute, and you just say, all right, I'm just going to roll the dice, because it does become more of a mathematical thing, and it eliminates this whole, like, well, I can just stack these cubes better and more effectively than you, so it's going to be really hard for you to knock me out. Like, I'm just a really dexterity. I got like a +6 to dexterity, right? So I'm just going to stack these cubes really well, no matter how many of them I have, and I'm going to be able to offset that ratio of needing to fail based on how many of these wounds I have. Where if you just go to using the dice instead of this to knock somebody out, you just wait until they hit a total, and I found that total was 11. You just wait until they hit the 10, 11 mark of wounds, and then you just roll these dice, and as long as you get the right total, you knock them out, right? And then you have to win 2 out of 3 rounds to be able to actually win the game, right? So I don't know. It's a different style. Where let me explain. If you had like 11 of these, you basically would have to start like stacking 11 of these as quickly as you could, and if you could do it without having them fall off, then then it's like, oh, but you can see right there, I'm trying to do it real quick, and I'm like shaking, and I'm like, and then it's like, so I almost feel like introducing a mechanic like this just sort of sets some people up to fail, and they may not want to admit or say they don't want to do it that way, and they'd rather just use the dice. And then it's just, they got to get to the point where they just lose and lose and lose, and they're like, all right, I'm done with this. Can I just use the dice? Oh, yeah, sure, we can just use the dice. I don't think this mechanic was necessary in this game. I think they just should have had the dice. And it would have been just fine. And the dice just work pretty much for everybody. Even if you cannot roll dice, you could have somebody else grab the dice and roll the dice for you. So it's like, I just think it's a mechanic that really just works for everybody. And I just think this was one of these gimmicky things that was just added in to make the game different. And I get it from that perspective, from a design style. But to me, it just ends up being a gimmicky mechanic that just really doesn't need to be there, and it doesn't make this game any better. So, is it a good game? Should you buy it if you come across it? I think the answer to that is yes. It is a very fun game, but if you could only get one of these styles of games, or literally like this game or this game, it's really hard for me to say because I'm a huge Awakened Realms fan. I love their IP. All of that screams at me, but it also creates a bias, right? And if I remove all that bias and I say, which is the game that I'm really going to table more, and which is the game that's easier for people to understand, and which is the game that just kind of nails it for what it's trying to be, and that's Unmatched. So in this kind of comparison, I would have to say if you only have the cash to get one of these, or if you want to get into buying a two-player game, I think this is a better entry point than this. And I think, again, this is going to offer that team play if you want to expand it past the 1v1. It's just an easier game that does a really good job and really pays off and is very satisfying when you position your character properly to not allow that person to get the hit, or for you to rush in and then get a big hit based on how you've positioned yourself, especially when you're using melee versus strict ranged characters. So that's what I would say on this kind of overview or matchup of these two particular titles. That's what I would say. Again, I don't want anybody walking away thinking, okay, he's saying then don't buy this, because I wouldn't have these games on the channel if they weren't both fantastic titles and games. They're awesome for what they are, but I think if you had to just pick one and you were new to this style of game, this is going to be your easier and better entry point. And then if you really loved that and you really liked that competitive 1v1, then I think going to something like this is going to take it kind of a notch up in complexity and rules, and more of that just competitive me versus you. All right, cool. If you like this content, if you like to see sort of compares like this, or if you like to just see different styles of games, again, this is not a direct like matchup of this one versus this one. It's just more informational to these types of games, because again, there are many games on the market that follow this play style. There are many games on the market that follow this play style, mechanically and conceptually. So hopefully the video was informative and you can make some decisions for yourself. If you have these games, if you have a different opinion, put it in the comment below. No problems with that. I think it helps the whole audience, the whole community, be able to see just different points and opinions. If you like the content, hit that like. I would very much appreciate it. And you can follow and subscribe to the channel. There's lots of different types of gaming stuff that we do here. With that, keep rolling them crits. See you next time.